Hey, welcome to another weekly seed. I'm going to be talking about open pollination today, specifically using basil as an example for you, so you can see what happens in this case in a home garden. And this can also happen on a large scale commercial farm or seed production farm level as well. So here's an example. And like I said, it can always be scaled. But today we're going to talk about open pollination. Open pollination is a process of plant sex, if you will, where seeds are formed and ideally the flower is fertilized, and ideally you would get your next generation plant that's true to how do I want to say this? Like true to that variety, true to that seed. You're getting a plant that's true. So in the case of what I'm going to be using today, basil, open pollination is when you have a flower and male and female parts both in that same flower, and it is fertilized via the wind, via insects, via honeybees, bumblebees, etc. And that seed that you'll get is true to its variety, that it's able to propagate and make regenerative seed for the next generation. Let me make it cut and dry. This is simplifying it, but just so it's super clear that when you have genovese basil, like this dark green one, this variety, that in order to have true to seed, so in the next time I plant this next year and the season after that, it will be genovese basil. It will remain genovese, and then it will be true to that genus, species, variety. It will not be opal. Same with the opal basil, that purple one behind it. If I don't allow it to cross when it's pollinating, that I can save that seed and it will be true to its species. It will grow opal basil next year. It will grow opal basil the following year. Okay? So when we have pollinators in open pollination crossing, those varieties can mix. And it creates cool different species such as this. Genus, Ocimum, species unknown. But it's a mix of those two, okay? So I hope that's clear. We have here behind me, I have an example for you. I plant 2 different varieties of basil, and then one which I have planted, which is seed from what I have just propagated over the years. So, which is a slight combination of the two. And I'll tell you why this happens. And it's great and fun and experimental for a home gardener, but I'll also tell you why it doesn't really work best if you're actually a seed farmer and you propagate seed and you need specific varieties of genus, species, specificity. So here, for example, I grow genovese basil, which is that nice green Italian variety that probably is the most popular, the one that you see the most, that people associate and affiliate with basil. You'll often see genovese. And here I have a couple different stands of genovese basil. I also have a variety called opal basil. I love opal basil. Opal is purple, this deep radiant purple. The blossoms are also purple, and it has, the effervescence of basil, but it has a slightly different flavor. You can certainly make pesto out of this, but it's purple. So it has a different sensorial experience on your palate when you have purple basil on your plate, but it's still fabulous. So in the case that I have both these varieties growing in my garden and they are open pollinated, what do you think happens? Because they're the same genus, they're different species of basil, but they can cross-pollinate. So then what happens, I'll pick a plant variety for you. What happens is with this process, is that I get a very unique, distinct type of basil. I call it, you know, the Erin's Garden basil variety, which is this fun, funky variety that I've saved seed for that is almost this wild combination of the two. It's not a true genovese and it's not a true opal, and the offspring, if you will, is some slight cool combination of the two. So this is what can happen when you have open pollination plants, which is awesome. You can save seed and continue to propagate your genovese style and your opal style and a cool combination of the two. If you want to keep your plants true to seed or true to that variety, once it sets flower, you would want to almost cage it, if you will, with a fine screen, and you would have to pollinate the plants yourself so that one honeybee from the genovese variety doesn't come over to the opal and they start mixing the pollen for that to happen. And like I said, this is super cool for a home gardener. I don't mind it. I think it's awesome. I think it's this dynamic, cool way of creating almost your own unique plant variety with open pollinated plants and saving that seed and then continuing it because this wildness of diversity can happen. Now, if you're a commercial farmer, if you want to save seed and get the same exact plant, fruit, or variety year after year, it's really important that you cage or screen or be thoughtful of having multiple diverse varieties in close proximity where they could have the chance of crossing. And if you're a seed grower and you're selling seed, it's really important to have that specificity for just compliance and proper labeling and transparency. I've worked in the dietary supplement industry for years, and when you're sourcing seed or plant parts for production, be it for herbal supplements or skincare, you know, knowing the genus and the species is really important. So as a grower, if you're selling seed, you really need to be thoughtful of and aware of this open pollination, cross-pollination process. Because if I'm buying Ocimum sanctum or Ocimum, which is the genus of basil, or it's like there's a myriad varieties of the species. I don't know the Latin on top of my head of the genovese or the opal or Thai. There's so many different varieties, species within that genus, that if I'm buying Genovese basil or opal basil seed, I want to know that I'm getting that seed. Do you follow? So it's really important if you are distributing or selling volume of seed, just to be thoughtful about. But if you're a home grower, an educator, and like myself, it's really fun to plant different varieties, certainly save your seed, like I'm a super advocate for, but playing around with what varieties that you can allow to thrive in your garden, you know? So I have kind of 3 distinct species that I have, or excuse me, yeah, species. I have 3 distinct species, varieties, which I cultivate and grow, and I love it. I think it's super cool. They grow very well here because over the years they've adapted. They have a propensity for the variables and conditions within this garden space. And as a home grower, I think it's really, really cool. And when you think about it, over time, this is how, you know, and I'm going to simplify this, but just some broad strokes so you can wrap your brain around this concept, which I think is super duper. But really over time, this is how we get unique regional varieties. This is how we get varieties that might be really attuned and thrive in the Southwest versus the Northwest, or how just over time the evolution of certain plant species through this cross-pollination and plant breeding process. This is really what happens, where it's like you're taking varieties that are of the same genus. Like these 2 are basils. So they are going to naturally be compatible with one another. This won't cross with my tomato plants or my eggplant or my chili, which I have right next to it. You follow? It is in that same, it has to be in that same family. It has to be in the same family. Oh, hummingbirds. So that is a little bit using basil as an example. And again, this will be the case for marigold varieties, different tomato varieties that you have in your garden, different corn varieties that you have in your garden. But I'm using basil as an example here because I can show you genovese, opal, and then the EJ special variety over there that is this amalgamation of the 2, of what happens when you have plants of the same variety in your garden, you let them go full cycle, you're open to having them cross-pollinate in their nature of open pollination and create new distinct varieties. Okay? It's pretty cool. So that is a little bit on open pollination, seed saving, having these cross, and new varieties being created. And like I said, if you are really wanting your varieties to stay the same, true to seed, definitely remember to, once they flower, to cap them, screen them, and you will have to pollinate them and mark it so you know, all right, this is that seed. And it's good to do several tests, almost R&D batch testing, seed testing, where you can truly begin to propagate seed varieties. It's really cool. So if you have any more questions, drop me a line, drop me a comment, and I'll see you next time in our next weekly seed. Happy gardening.